Hi guys, this is Kim from Kim's Vintage Obsessions, and I'm back this week. I wanted to apologize for not uploading a video last week. Life has been kind of crazy. I started a new job, my summer classes started, so I kind of wanted to get settled in and focus on that stuff for a little bit, but we're back this week. I would like to give a little update. I am really loving the job so far. I'm a little nervous for the summer class, but it'll be fine. This week I want to talk about the thing that actually got me started down this journey of collecting glassware, which is sherbet dishes. So I actually have a collection of over 30 different sherbet dishes. Now, a sherbet dish is what they would use in the 30s, 40s, 50s for ice cream. So this was an ice cream cup, and you would eat it out of here. Nowadays, people more use them for champagne coupes. So if you're looking into buying them, they'll either be listed as a sherbet or as a low champagne coupe because it has a short stem, so it's called a low champagne coupe. But originally I started collecting them because I thought, how cool would it be to have special cups for whenever I eat ice cream. Who doesn't like ice cream? So I figured that was cool, and I'll be talking about each one of them. So this might be a little bit of a long video. For most of them I went through and I identified the year they were made, the pattern, the company, the name of the color, things like that, in order to kind of make a little collection for myself someday when I have the space. I'd like to maybe display them on some shelves somewhere and have them out because they're truly beautiful and they catch the sun quite nice, or at least especially the oranges. The orange and red ones do. So I'm excited to talk about these with you today. Some of them have stories associated with them, some of them not so much, like you just pick them up at Goodwill or something, but some of them are really special to me, and we will get started. So as you can see here, I have them organized in rainbow order, or at least as close as I could get to rainbow order. And these are the cards, the identification cards I wrote out for most of them. Some of them I either wasn't able to find information on, or I never got around to writing out or conducting research on them. But I will be doing that in the future, and I think I'm going to start talking about them from, I guess, color order. I guess I could go about when I got them and which one was my first one or my most special one, but this seems to make sense. It's pretty, so we are going to start with talking about this dark red one in the corner here. I'm going to start with the first piece of glass that I ever bought, which is this ruby red sherbet dish or low champagne coupe. This was bought at the marketplace of Lemoyne, which is an antique store in Lemoyne, and it was one of the first ones that we went to, and I saw this and I decided that this was gonna be my first ice cream cup. Since I only had one, I was displaying it on my dresser. Now they go in the cabinet with the rest of the glass, and to identify it, this is a low champagne coupe or a tall sherbet. Because it has a stem, it's a tall sherbet. It is the color royal ruby, which is made, so traditionally red glass was very expensive to make because it used gold. So if you would mix the element gold, AU, in with hot glass, it would turn your glass red, and it's called red gold or gold red or something like that, I believe. Now that isn't cost effective for mass production. So with a piece like this, they figured out that if you use selenium, which creates yellow, and you mix that in with the glass along with another element I can't think of the name of right now, you get red. And this was the color ruby red, which was very, very popular. This was made by the Anchor Hocking Glass Company. It was made in Lancaster, Ohio, Salem, New Jersey, and Monica, Pennsylvania. And it was made from 1938 to 1967. So there was a very similar version of this made that has a little knob or a little crystal shape in the stem. This one does not have that. It's more simple. But that's this one in a nutshell. Keeping with the reds, I'll talk about this one. This was bought at Bedford Street Antiques, which is in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. We went up to the second floor and I saw this, and just look at that red color. Absolutely magnificent. It's heavy too. It feels like a goblet or a chalice. This is the pattern Jamestown in the color Ruby, made by the Fostoria Glass Company in Fostoria, Ohio. So I'd like to note that most of the pieces that I have are American-made pressed glass. This pattern and this color was made from 1964 to 1982, so it is not as old as some of the other pieces I have. You can tell from the style and the color that it's something that's a little more modern, but very beautiful. I can't wait to see what that looks like in the sunlight. Next, we're going to get into the oranges, and this guy has a really cool story along with a few other of the pieces. I believe I bought 5 or 6 together. So I went out to visit my grandparents, and they went antiquing with me because at that point I wanted to share my hobby with them. So we went out, and there was a little store. I can't remember where it was, but it was essentially people that sell glass. Pittsburgh used to be a very big spot for making glassware, and for example, there's Bryce Glass Company, and there's several others that were all in the same area, and so there's a lot of that glass still there in that area, so there's a big resale market, and there's quite a few stores. So we visited one, and it had different vendors that sell glassware, and this one guy, I have his business card. It's somewhere in my closet filed away, but it was like vintage barware or something like that. He had the most impressive vintage barware collection I've ever seen in my life. I mean, bookshelves from floor to ceiling of wine glasses, colored glasses, just anything that you could imagine. It was beautiful. And the deal with some of these is he would sell them as even sets plus 1 if there was an odd number. So it'd be 6 plus 1 or 4 plus 1 or 8 plus 1. And I wasn't looking to buy sets because I buy one of each to add to my collection. And I explained this to him. I was like, look, you have some of the most beautiful sherbet dishes I've ever seen. And he was also kind of amused that I would use them for ice cream and not for alcohol, because I was like, I don't know, 17-year-old 18-year-old kid being like, hey, I want to eat ice cream out of these, and he typically sells barware. And so I told him that, and he said, tell you what, if you can go around and find any of the ones with a +1, I'll let you buy the +1, and I'll break up the set so you can have the +1, and you don't have to buy all of the sets. So he was very generous for that, and it was a thrill to go around and look for the +1s. This one, I mean, look, it's beautiful. One of my favorites because this orange is so vibrant. This is in the pattern Provincial in the color orange by the Norte Company, and it was produced in, I don't want to mispronounce this, but I think it's Nagoya, Japan. So this isn't an American-made piece, but this is Japanese, and it's from 1974 to 1980, only 6 years of production. But you can tell, from the thickness of it, the vibrancy, it does, once you find out it's from the 70s, it makes sense that it is a 1970s piece. This next one was also from the same vendor that I bought that orange one from. This is absolutely beautiful. This is called amberina, so whenever you have red fading into yellow or orange, that is amberina glass. Now this one is a low champagne coupe, or I wouldn't call it a tall sherbet like some of the other ones that have longer stems. This one has a very short stem, so maybe a low sherbet. And the pattern, or the color name, the pattern is El Rancho. And whenever I talked to the owner of the booth, he was telling me that it reminds him of the Flintstones, because you can see the dimples, it kind of looks like pebbles. So it reminds him of the Flintstones, and the color is called Fire, which is what the company was marketing their amberina glass as. So it's fire in the pattern El Rancho, and it was made by Bryce Brothers Glass Company in Mount Pleasant, Pennsylvania, which is pretty near to Pittsburgh, and it was made from 1955 to 1960. Now this is a low sherbet dish, no stem whatsoever. You can see this one has a little bit of a stem and this one has no stem. This is in the color Iridescent Marigold, and the pattern is Iris and Herringbone. This was made by the Jeanette Glass Company in Jeanette, Pennsylvania, and it was dated to about the 1950s. So this pattern was originally debuted in just clear glass, which was crystal. The color was called crystal, and then in the 1950s they decided to bring it back with this iridescent marigold or peach color. It's very beautiful. I have eaten ice cream out of this one for sure. I'm obsessed with the 1920s, and the fact that the pattern was invented in 1928 was really exciting for me. And I've seen other pieces that match the set. You can get pitchers, glasses, plates. It's a very popular pattern and very easily accessible if that's something you want to get into collecting. This guy here reminds me of a pumpkin. It is the Marigold color carnival glass. So carnival glass is when you look at a piece of glassware and it seems to have multiple colors or an iridescent type finish to it. That's what we call carnival glass. And it has a clear stem. When the pattern is called Smooth Rays, and it's from the Imperial Glass Company in Bel Air, Ohio. It was produced from 1910 to 1920, and the molds and the colors were used again in the 1960s. So I can't say for sure if this was from the first edition or the second edition. I suspect it's from the second edition due to the vibrancy of the carnival glass, or the orange portion of it. I've seen ones that are older and they definitely look like they're from the 1910s. But this one is in 1960s, and it's really interesting because I believe the glass molds were carved out of wood, and they're very expensive to carve initially. So you'd have to use them over and over and over in order to get your investment back and make a profit. So in that case, sometimes companies would come back for an anniversary edition, or they would bring it back a couple decades later, as is the case with this one. Now this is a true example of depression glass. It is that pastel pink, very thin. Now keep in mind, depression glass was made to be cheap. It was made to be cheap. They were sold at your nickel and dime stores so that women could have something beautiful during the Great Depression and have something to set their table with to boost mood, boost morale. This pattern is block optic in the shade of pink, made by the Hawking Glass Company, which is prior to the merge of when it became the Anchor Hawking Glass Company. This was produced in Lancaster, Ohio from 1929 to 1933. So this guy here is one of my oldest pieces for sure. Very delicate. When you're going out, sometimes you can tell the difference between original and reproduction depression glass because of A, the thickness of the glass. If it's very thin, very delicate, you know it's old, and the color. So in the 1970s, they brought back the concept of depression glass, but the color is a pink with a little bit of a purple hue because that's what was popular in the time, whereas this warm pink, this warm pastel pink is what was popular in the 1930s. This is a unique piece. This represents the color amber. I'm not particularly fond of amber due to the brown undertones. I just feel like it's just not my vibe, but I wanted an example of it for my collection. This is in the pattern Patrician, also called Spoke, and it's made by the Federal Glass Company in Columbus, Ohio from 1933 to 1937. So this is another example of depression glass. You can see the detail around it from the molds. So all of the depression glass is molded, which means it's just poured in and it cools. You pull it apart and you can tell that when you look at the seam. If you see a seam, that means that the piece was made in a mold. And I will talk about pontil marks a little later, which is when something is hand blown. So you can tell the difference between something that is pressed glass or something that is handmade. These next two I want to talk about together. They're particularly special to me because they are examples of watermelon glass. So watermelon glass is when you have that beautiful pink from the Great Depression mixed with green. So these are definitely 1920s. Watermelon glass was popular in the 1920s. I have two examples of them. Now, unfortunately, both of these suffer from something called flea bites, which are tiny little nicks taken out of the glass. Let me see if I can show. There's one here. There's a few along the rim. This one has one here as well. So flea bites unfortunately happen with very thin, delicate glassware over time. You just have to be careful with your glass. It does decrease the value of it, but I was just thrilled to come across pieces of watermelon glass, at least in the Sherbet. I've seen quite a few goblets wine glass sets, but I've not seen many Sherbet dishes. So this one I wasn't able to identify. I suspect that both of these are from nicer brands. So in the 1930s, you have your Depression glass, which is bottom of the line, and then you have elegant glass. And elegant glass is what the more affluent in the 1930s would be purchasing, and they have extra details, so the quality is higher. They have hand finishing, so they might carve designs on them, or they might have two-tone, so just the production of it was more expensive. The pattern of this is Rays, and it's watermelon glass made by the Tiffin Glass Company in Tiffin, Ohio. So that's one of the nicer glass companies, such as Heisey, Tiffin. They're on the same level, I would say. Made from the 1920s to the 1930s. I would say that watermelon glass was not popular beyond the 1930s, so most of the time when you see something like this, it is close to, if not over, 100 years old at this point. Here's one that you've seen in another video, my uranium glass video. Go and check it out if you're interested in seeing the world's largest collection of uranium glass. This pattern is called Block Optic, so it is actually the same pattern as that pink one that I showed a little bit earlier, and it's in the green uranium color. This does glow under a black light and has small amounts of radiation. It's made by the Hawking Glass Company in Lancaster, Ohio from 1929 to 1933. So again, another prime example. You can see the thinness, the delicateness, the mold marks, all of the prime indications of 1930s glassware. This guy I was not able to identify, but there's a cool design feature. I bought this at Goodwill. It was just beautiful and I decided to come home with it. It was $1. It has something called a golf ball stem. So sometimes when it comes to drinkware, now I will say that this is borderline sherbet. Like, I would eat ice cream out of it. Most people, this is just a cup or a glass to drink out of. But it has a golf ball stem. There's a glass company, I believe it's called Morgantown, which is very popular for golf ball stems. This one is definitely not Morgantown glass. You can tell from the quality defects. There are bubbles in the glass. There's just imperfections in the piece. The golf ball itself is not very defined. So you can tell that this isn't the highest quality piece of glass, where Morgantown is a very nice glass brand. They have really interesting pieces. Sometimes they have animals instead of the golf ball stem. But very beautiful green. I don't come across too much green when I'm collecting, so to have a piece like this just kind of rounded out my collection. And here's another primary example of carnival glass. You can see almost that oil slick look where it's blue, it's purple, it's green. It changes as you shift it around. This is actually a sugar bowl. So this is not a sherbet dish. This is a sugar bowl. Now they look similar, similar shape, similar size, but this would actually go with a creamer. And fun fact about design differences with sugar bowls: if a sugar dish has a lid, it is meant for granulated sugar, and if it doesn't have a lid, it's meant for sugar cubes. So that is just a little etiquette tip when it comes to using your sugar dishes, if anyone ever uses them for guests. The pattern of this is Harvest Carnival by Kaale, and it's blue iridescent carnival glass by the Indiana Glass Company, made in Dunkirk, Indiana from 1971 to 1976. So I do have a few other pieces of this pattern in different, I have a candy dish, for example, that matches this. But you can see it's harvest themed because there's grapes, there's leaves, grapes. This also comes in green carnival, it comes in milk glass, it comes in, I believe, orange marigold carnival. But this one's very popular, and the history of carnival glass is also very interesting. Like I said, I'm sorry, this is going to be a long video, but you will learn a lot. So carnival glass was actually invented in the early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s, as a prize at carnivals. So what would happen is little boys and girls would go to the carnival and they'd play games, and then they'd win a prize, and one of the prizes they could pick from was carnival glass to bring home to mom or to give mom. That was the whole concept behind it. And even sometimes the object was to smash a piece of carnival glass. So it was cheap, it was beautiful. You can see some really older pieces. It's they spray salts onto the hot glass and they fire it again in order to give it this color. So sometimes the base color of the glass is blue, sometimes it's purple, sometimes it's red or orange, and depending on the color of the base glass, will it determine the value of the piece. So this isn't very high value. This is just 1970s remakes of what was originally made in the early 1900s. But it was a fun fact. The object was either to smash the carnival glass or to win a piece for your mom, which is really cool to think about. This is an example of smoke glass. So I bought this from the same gentleman in Pittsburgh that I bought the two other ones that I discussed prior. Now this is definitely not in sherbet dish territory. Would I eat ice cream out of it? Yes, I would. But it's definitely getting into champagne coupe territory. As you can see here, a lot of times when you see rims, such as with the metal, it's either gold or platinum. I believe this one has a platinum rim. So the pattern of this is called Prelude, and it's smoke glass with a platinum rim. So you can see that dark green, sometimes it's grayish smoke glass, and it's from a company called Gorham Reisart from Bavaria, West Germany. And it actually still has the original sticker of purchase telling the brand and the fact that it was made in Bavaria, West Germany. And it's a 1960s piece, very classic color palette for the 1960s in my opinion. Now these next two are pieces that I would call cruise ship glass. So you know how you can go on a cruise ship and you can buy cool items as souvenirs, ones that you buy in maritime and you don't have to necessarily pay sales tax. In my understanding, I could be wrong, but these pieces are really neat. I like to make Shirley Temples in these. I mean, a Sprite and some grenadine and a cherry. Looks very beautiful. They're very bottom heavy. These glass balls are solid. So these I would call cocktail glasses, and it's from a company, or the pattern Ebba, by the company Kosta Boda, made in Kosta, Sweden. So these are not American made, they are Swedish. This one is the peridot with clear, so they're gemstone themed. There's a whole set of every color. I believe there's 12 different colors and they're all meant to represent different gemstones. So we have the peridot and the amethyst. And these ones are handmade. So these are hand blown. This is art glass. This is getting into the territory of art glass and not pressed glass. You can tell here that there is no seam. There's no seam from a mold. Also, I apologize, they're a little dusty. So there's no seam from the mold, and here you can tell they used a technique to put bubbles into the base of it. There's also small bubbles in the glass, meaning that it was hand blown, so it was connected to a pontil at some point, which is that tool that they use to blow into the glass, and it was shaped to look like this. This next piece is another prime example of depression glass. So this color is called Ritz Blue, like the Ritz Hotel, and the pattern is Modern Tone, made by the Hazel Atlas Glass Company in Wheeling, West Virginia. I've actually been down to Wheeling, West Virginia in order to go antiquing, and they have quite a few glass museums down there, which are really interesting to go visit. I believe the Depression Glass Museum, the American Depression Glass Museum, is in or near Wheeling, West Virginia, and I've been to that twice. And this was made from 1936 to 1942. This is in the color Ritz Blue, also known as Cobalt glass, because the element of cobalt is used to make this color. This one is very sought after, very typical example. There's quite a good bit of modern tone cobalt glass that can be collected and purchased. This was bought in the same group from that gentleman in Pittsburgh that I had mentioned before. Now this I was not able to identify. Sometimes when you're typing into Google blue champagne coupe 1950s, 1960s, you try and find things and sometimes you just don't come up with anything identifiable. But the man that I bought it from suggested that it might be Viking glass, which I believe is made in West Virginia, or West Virginia. And this has a very 60s feel to it. The more experience you get with collecting pieces, you can kind of look at something and date it according to other pieces that you've seen. So to me, this looks like it could be very easily a 1960s piece. And fun fact, my cat drinks out of, we have special sherbet dishes for him so that he can drink milk out of them. I'll have to show a clip of him drinking milk at the end of the video because he has his own special glass. This used to be it, but we decided to move him into a different piece, which is has a wider slope to it, because I guess when cats stick their face in to drink or to eat, they get whisker fatigue because they're feeling around with their whiskers. And we wanted him to be comfortable while he drinks his milk out of a fancy glass. This is an example of the American pattern glassware. I'm sure most people have seen this somewhere because this is the longest running, most popular glass pattern ever. So they have this pattern in just about every piece of glassware that you can imagine, and I see it everywhere when I'm antiquing. So this is clear, and the fun fact about this is elegant glass. This is not your bottom of the line glassware. This is what people would be gifted when they get married or when there's a life event, or if they had more money, they would buy something like this, and it's fire polished, which means when it comes out of the mold, sometimes it's a little rough. The edges need to be cleaned up. So this was actually fire polished, a fire was put on it and it polished it out to give it that high shine, smooth edges, just great clarity and details. This was made by the Fostoria Glass Company in Moundsville, West Virginia from 1915 to 1986. So that is a little over 70 years of production. So this pattern was produced for the better part of a century, and therefore there is a lot of supply of it. I actually have it in a butter dish. I believe I have a few other pieces. One time I saw the punch bowl set for that, and it is massive. I don't think I know enough people in order to own a punch bowl that big. This one I was not able to identify. However, it does have the title of the most expensive sherbet dish that I've ever purchased at $15 from Lemoyne Marketplace. I think I eyed it up at least 4 times. I'd walk by it and be like, man, it's so pretty. It's iridescent, and it's the shade of blue that I just haven't seen in any other sherbet dishes, and it was $15, and I was like, do I want to spend that on one piece of glass? And eventually it got to me, and I did splurge, and I did buy it. So this one, very beautiful, very solid, however, sadly unidentifiable. This is another example of depression glass. This is in the pattern Madrid, and it is blue, ice blue in my opinion. This is a conical sherbet dish, as it has a cone shape as opposed to a coupe. and it's made by the Federal Glass Company in Columbus, Ohio from 1932 to 1939. This was bought in West Virginia. My family goes on sometimes road trips or day trips down to see Berkeley Springs, and they have a beautiful antique mall right next to it, and I bought this one there. So I guess you could say it's a souvenir. This was bought at the old factory in Hummelstown. It was on the second floor. I believe it was $2. This is an example of elegant glass, as it has these designs which are carved by hand using a wheel cutter. So an artist would put in the designs by hand. Now, fun fact, I have never been able to identify where this was made. I've been told that it might be made by a company of orifers in Sweden. I actually joined a Facebook community of very serious glass collectors to try and get this identified. You could post and they would reply with what they think it was, and that's what they said. But it's funny because you have to fill out an application to get into this glass group. So you have to prove that you're serious about collecting in order for them to let you in. So I thought that was funny about how exclusive sometimes collectors groups can be. This one is another one of the first ones that I collected, and it has a really cool background. So this is, again, not a sherbet dish. This is a footed tumbler. So you would drink water out of this more than likely. Or, I mean, lemonade or something, but this is typically a water glass. The color is called wisteria, and you can tell faintly what's left of the platinum rings. The pattern is number 707 Melba, also called pebble rim, because it has a pebble pattern around the rim of the glass. It's made by L.E. Smith in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, only in the year 1936. I spent at least 2 to 3 days on the internet scouring the internet to try and find who made this and when, and I was finally able to find it. I think I was 2 hours into a search. I came across one website that was about L.E. Smith glassware. There's something similar, the Moroccan pattern made by Morgantown, I think. Similar colors, similar pattern, but still different. But on the L.E. Smith collector's website, I found one photo of this, which gave me the information that I needed in order to find the pattern and the name of the color, which is wisteria. So it's not just purple, not amethyst, but wisteria. And it was actually made in Pennsylvania. How cool is that? So a lot of these glasses were made in the Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania region, which is really cool to be a Pennsylvanian collecting Pennsylvania glass. Now, I did find out that this is quite valuable. I mean, by valuable, I mean maybe it's worth $40 and I paid $3 or so. But the whole set together, and now there was a whole set with the pitcher and with 8 glasses, that would have went for a pretty penny, but I decided to be that person and buy just one, unknowingly breaking up what could have been quite a valuable set. This is the color burgundy, or sometimes called amethyst. And this is the same pattern modern tone as the Cobalt piece that I showed. And this is made by the Hazel Atlas Glass Company in Wheeling, West Virginia. And what's funny is that this was the company's attempt at red glass. So they were trying to make red glass, and they ended up with this beautiful deep purple shade. It's made from 1937 to 1942. And I just think that it's really cool that the chemistry didn't work out right and they ended up with one of their most popular colors sold. This is an example of milk glass, which most white glass is called milk glass. It is handmade. Now there is this pattern, which is Harvest, Colony Harvest, which I showed you in the blue carnival glass earlier, was very popular. It was made over several decades in several different colors, very popular. So the first edition of this was handmade, at least in the milk glass, and you can tell, there's forums online you can read to tell the difference. So this one, if you feel the weight of it, and if you look at the definedness of the maple leaves, you can tell that this is the earlier version, which was handmade and therefore is worth slightly more money, but when it switched over to being machine made and more automated, then the quality tends to suffer slightly. And it was made by the Indiana Glass Company, made for the Lancaster Colony Corporation in Dunkirk, Indiana from the 1950s to 1966. So, fun fact, this also used to be one of my cat's milk dishes. And I think I only have 3 more to cover, so we're getting there. This is the pattern Ovide, which was one of the earliest depression glass patterns there were. It's very plain. There's nothing pattern-wise, like other than the decal. There's nothing to it. There's no designs printed on it or in the mold. And this is platinite with red and gold bands. So that is, you can see the little rim on the inside, and which is gold. So that's gold rim with the red around the outside. So this is a very Art Deco pattern. So this leads me to believe that this is late 20s, early 30s, likely 1936 to the 1940s. It's made by the Hazel Atlas Glass Company in Wheeling, West Virginia. So I have quite a few of those in my collection. And sometimes you can find Scotty dogs or just different designs. Sometimes there's one that with black and red bands on it. So you can have fun with it and collect it. This personally to me, although it wasn't made in the 1950s, this looks like something that would come straight out of the 50s. There is a ice cream place called the Jigger Shop, and this, my family went there for a day trip, and we stopped in at the Jigger Shop and we ordered, I believe, the whoopie pie sundae or something, and it came out in a metal dish, and somebody got a bacon banana flambe sundae, and they served it up in this, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have this. So that was super exciting. I sent them an email letting them know the significance of the glassware that they're using to serve their sundaes. I never heard back, but I just thought that that was a cool story to share. So that is the entirety of my glass collection as far as my sherbet dishes, which sometimes leans into the champagne glass or martini glass direction. But easily you can eat ice cream out of any of them, or a Shirley Temple, or a root beer float, or I do like to use the glass that I buy, which is something that I don't want to buy it to look at it. I like to use it, and I will definitely include a clip of my cat drinking from his sherbet dish, or his milk glass, milk glass, because he drinks milk out of it. But I wanted to say thank you guys for watching my video and for all the support, the views, the comments, the subscribers. Thank you very much. If you're new here, please subscribe and like the video. I would greatly appreciate that. If you have anything that you want to know about or see more of, please let me know. Or if there's anything that I maybe got incorrect or you could inform me about, please let me know. I'm always open to learning new things and researching more. So this was Kim with Kim's Vintage Obsessions. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will look forward to teaching you guys more next week. Okay, so he just wants to look at it today and not drink it, but this is his milk dish right now. Say hi, Smo. He's not a paid actor, I promise.